Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are around this world, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Bob. I am your Sensei Bob, and I am covered in my um, protective gear, um, protecting myself from the exosomes, and I'm in, you know, social distancing, and welcome to the new normal. How you liking it so far? It's almost, there have been so many studies on how to democide a democracy. And slow but sure, we never quite had a democracy. And, if you want to see what a pandemic and the outcome of a new world order is, just go look at what occurred to North, Central, and South America and Africa, indigenous peoples' lands, when Europeans showed up. Looking for a alien invasion. Here we are. Hey there, Jane dear. Good morning. New Abby normal. Yep. Question is, what are we going to do about it? We're just going to sit around and wait till we get picked up, for our Abby normal behavior. Are we going to, do with those poor folks who went to that Midwestern capital, brandishing their firearms? And I've been talking about the need of a alternative aesthetic, to fear and anxiety. Hey, Lane, good to see you. Redox Laboratories Biochip is making a vaccine, right? For the what's very, the coronal, what I'll call the Nuvo 19 is really just a RNA string. And what's very interesting is, Anthony Padkey, his whole career has been in infectious diseases. He was very instrumental in, AIDS. And one of the things AIDS has is a protein sieve around its essence, thus masking it to your immune system. And you listen to a lot of folks on the internet. It's very interesting. I keep telling you guys, you need to put me on thumb drives and on CD-ROMs and on your hard drives, because I only exist in the cloud. Even my writings are in the cloud. And the internet was created by DARPA in the 50s as a communication network between universities, national laboratories, and the Defense Department to exist for COG, continuation of government, but whose, and after an event. I, Now, it's hard for them to take it down because it was designed with no central node, right? Lloyd Webber. Well, that name sounds familiar. I'll go check it out, Lana. And I mean, people, look at David Icke. He's been talking about this since '91, right? I've been talking about this since '72, and there were a lot of other folks, who've been talking about it. The Greeks talked about it, right? Um, so you have to look past the material. You know, these lies. This little bag known as Al Bob here, your sensei Al Bob, is just an avatar for my free will. I can do a lot of things to my avatar. I mean, they've been spraying our environment. I almost had the guy's name. I worked for a guy in Asheville. That was his videographer. Oh, what's his name? It'll pop into my mind. And he is pretty much, him and a number of people what made Asheville the hipster jungle it is today. And he was heir to the cigarette fortune, and he felt guilty about it. He was a true liberal. But he was a nice guy and was very generous. And he bought up most of downtown and saved it from the wrecking ball. And his wife, who was a real, fascist liberal, she had no money. She saw a sucker in him, married him, and basically her and his lawyer, he died. He went to a third world country with her to see the horrors of the capitalist society on the third world. It's in Brazil or somewhere, and he got a fungus, and he died relatively quickly, and she inherited his millions. And her little story changed very quickly, from We the People to just her, right? And her and the lawyer, right? And they bought, they owned the town, and the person who culturally changed things there was a guy, John Cram, who owned, the city sold him a third of downtown, from, the square all the way down to the hospital, about 20 buildings for $1, right? And at that time, that was where all the, crime and drugs and prostitution was. And, was a movie theater and about 10 really beautiful buildings, and then a whole bunch of real estate, right? And he got it for $1. And the other thing he got for $1 from the city was this guy. I mean, Asheville was known. there were more cures for every disease in the mountains of the Blue Ridge Mountains, especially right there around Asheville and Waynesville. And this guy who was an herbalist, I mean, Asheville was known as Herbalist Center, and UNCA was this guy's college, right? And he had a herbal forest, right? And Broadway, coming from the French Broad into town, was this aquiferic environment that he owned. That was like his driveway. And when he was about to die, he gave everything to the city of Asheville, to the express, legal thing. A, got to support my herbal college and teach people to be, oh, herbalists and healers, and that's what UNCA became. And he had a whole forest up behind it, and he made sure there were no roads into it. So it up until the time I was there in the '90s, that forest was still there, and lived in I lived in two apartment buildings. First one was the old lady one, right near the big hotel, the Nazi hotel. And then I moved closer to the university, and I was like 2 blocks away. I could just walk. And one day I was walking the back little road into the university, and I saw this path, and I went up the path, and it's just like Garden of Eden. And I had some images up, but I'll have to dig up. And I used to hang out there, and so did a lot of homeless people, right? And they were very interesting folk. They had been there for years. No one even knew they were up there, and they were just blocks away from neighborhoods, right? They didn't bother anybody. And all these healing herbs, and these guys and gals were the leftovers from the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s of the people who knew about the herbs, like the old crone, And I hung out with them until, in the wisdom of the university, they built a road right up to that and chopped up and bulldozed down all the healing herbs and trees, and turned it into a corporate cul-de-sac for research, right? And the needs of the university. Well, that went expressively against this guy's legal, giving the property to the city of Roanoke, who abrogated all of that and bulldozed this beautiful little aquifer. And there were all these little cabins that this herbalist guy had. People who would come and study with him would live in these cabins. Well, they called it a blight and bulldozed it down, right? And that's where we had the Pink House. It was one of these buildings. It was a big concrete building, not big, maybe 3,000 square feet. Had 3 floors. The top floor was beautiful because it was southern. It had a balcony all the way around the building. And the basement kind of had been flooded so many times that it had become its own bio zone. And it was a little funky down there. So we didn't even try and fix that up. It was an abandoned building. We just squatted it, right? There were a bunch of these, punks that left New York because New York stopped being an alternative for them. And so they came to Asheville, right? And before the big hoopla of the hipster everything of Asheville, these guys showed up, like in '94. And I met them on the street, and I said, "Well, you guys from the Lower East Side?" "Oh, yeah, we're from Alphabet City." I said, "Really? I'm from..." Anyway, and I took them over to this building. I said, "There's your place." And they cleaned it all up, and they painted it pink. And I told them where they could go to the dump and find stuff to fix the place up. And they found these, big drums of pink paint. And we called it the Pink House. And we used to have, this one kid was, really loved craft beer. And so he used to make craft beer. He got a job at this pizza place that was, making their own beer. Anyway, so he had the apparatus, and so he would bring back his own, special brews. And I had worked for the state. I went from doing an ethnography on, Biltmore House, and an ethnography on the city of Asheville, and then an ethnography of the, over where the Cherokee lived in over near Waynesville on the border of Georgia. And they were trying to, they were the only Indians. Why the Cherokee got it so bad was that they were better white people than white people. They were the businessmen of the indigenous folk. So they traded well with the American, with the white folk, the Europeans, and they always got over on them. And, why the whole Southern revivalist architecture existed. Cherokee went over to Europe and bought clothes so they could look more like Europeans, and they were better looking than the white people, right? And they built those first big houses, and that's why Andrew Jackson, he was jealous. That's why he genocided them, and they always thought they could make a deal. They were business folk, and you can't make a deal with the devil, basically, right? Gummies. So here we are at this great opportunity. I've been kept talking about the last year and a half, talking about the window of opportunity. And here is Friday. So we are exactly 210 days from the event. And this was the precursor. What's going on now is just the precursor. I mean, this ain't even the event. This is our softening up, right? It's a military event. They have stationed the tanks all over this country. They brought all the guys home. And it's going to be a planetary event. But America has to be the example. We've always been the example. So, I'm not going to try to escape because there's nowhere to go. I'm out in the deep green. Again, I soon will not be doing as many shows as I'm doing now because my access to the internet is going down. But that's why I did so many. There's at least 1,200 shows up there, right? And they're all shamanic representations, right? That are way more than they seem to be. I'm not just some kind of funny, entertaining clown. I'm a shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologic alchemist. Right? And what I do on these shows is to help you help yourself, right? This is a shamanic ceremony. The only way we can break this is through a new aesthetic. And this one is, the only one that's going to work is our individual service to love's co-creation, right? Not any political belief, not any religious belief, but service to love's co-creation in every day and every way, taking the piece of the earth, making it stronger. Man, there we are, 18 minutes and 18 seconds. Little shamanic moment, right? So, I remember giving this. I've given two kind of speeches other than these Dreamy Dreamland shows. One at a conference and one at the United Nations. And both of them, I said, guys, we're being set up. All of this technology that I'm looking at is ancient and is being used against us. And in 1972, I gave this speech because I was representing the alternative technology, NGO and the UN, and I basically stated, look at the major pandemics that have happened in the 20th century, and they have all been around the rollout of electromagnetic environments. The pandemic of the Spanish flu that occurred between 1916 and 1921. They call it the flu of 1917, 1918, because that was when it really was evident. And again, it was similar to what this is, in that um, it was our bodies responding to the electromagnetics, because we were rolling out radio, and our body wasn't used to that electromagnetic radiation of radio. And so, it saw it as a toxin, and that toxin was an endocrine response in our body and our immune system, which caused a cortisol, viral response. And that's what viruses are. They're like the scrubbing bubbles of our body, to get rid of toxins, that our immune system can't go after biologically, So the virus has to go after it chemically, right? Now, there's a ton of YouTube. You go on any, you go on to Richie from Boston, Max Igon Crowhouse, Jimmy Dore, you name it. There's a ton of stuff out there that you can, and then there's other folk who get hung up on things and kind of go off on their own little thing. Like, what's her name? Oh, I forget what it's called. It's named after the Round Table guys, and Jack Kennedy's, Camelot, So, that lady's okay, but she's, again, she kind of goes off on her thing. And, guys like Truth Stream Media, they're very good. And our princess Truthfulness, Gracefulness, both of those are really great. Those guys are really, they put out really classic, documentaries. I mean, they're documentarian filmmakers, right? And they write it, they edit it, they research it, they do great work. Truth Stream Media's documentary on the Man of Mind is, really, thank you very much. And Grace does great things. She really picks into her one on the story of, who is Bill Gates. And she has many, many really great ones, right? And like I said, the documentarians. There's a lot of information out there on the internet, except it's all in the digital domain, meaning it could be going like that, and it will be. That's why I'm telling you guys, put these shows on thumb drive. Why I'm doing so many is to give you a plethora of shamanic experiences, right? And every show is, I tune myself up before I do it. The energy going out onto the World Wide Web, I'm, putting it out there. And, AI is the first person to show up. The one guy who doesn't really, respond, whereas Jane and Lana and 09 and Buddy and a number of others, about 20 of you. Now, every time I finish the show, it's quite interesting. Like last night or yesterday I did one and I ended it. And, it showed like, 6 people, right? But the total people who watched was about, 100 and something, right? But today when I went on my channel and looked at it, it said like, 12. So, it's make sure that the algorithm, I stay on the, but, the lowest man, on the totem pole, it's not, the winged creature at the top of the totem pole that's most important, And they always go, oh, you're the lowest man on the totem pole. Well, within, the indigenous structure of the totem pole, the most valued character of the totem pole is the lowest man, because that's the foundation. And the foundation is the crux of everything. I mean, look at our present materialist, capitalist, corporate, oligarchic foundation, corrupt beyond belief. We have the best legislators money can buy. They're all corrupt, right? Look at it from Bernie to Biden to Carrot Head to anyone, Mini Mike, they're all, there isn't an honest one amongst them. Madam Poplowski, the crew, they're all bought and sold, Now, I am the first, I worked in the desperate corporate scene, but, I went in as a shamanic priest, and they, hired me, right? And they used me, and that was fine because I was, again, going into these environments, injecting in the alternative aesthetic. And then I got sick, from it because instead of, I went along with, I thought the end of times was coming anytime soon, just like George H. looking at. I mean, that was a scripted thing when he was, having the debate between Billy Boy and, Perot, um, right on cue, camera went on him and he's looking at his watch, which gave the whole, like he couldn't care less, right? And so Billy Boy became president, And, Perot was the only one kind of, at suck and sound of your job, He was right on, And then they basically, and he was getting 20, 30%, almost as much as anybody else. And then they basically threatened his family. So he pulled off, right? He said, I don't need this. Now I am all by myself. So I am willing to dive back into that corporate pool. Come on, guys. You definitely need your Sensei Al Bob. The corporate world, I keep telling you this, you should, you need, you can't go totally Nazi on the world population, I mean, look what they're doing in China. Do you want that for your children, your grandchildren? You want them wearing little halos, when they're in school where the AI is reading their mind, it'll be straight like, Minority Report, Stevie Boy is the songbird for the corporate world. All his movies are about, hey, kids, this is what's going on. And go watch that movie, Minority Report, especially when Tom Cruise kind of goes into Walmart's and the shelves, oh, Mr. Jones, because they're seeing his facial. You can, go and have a face change, but your biometrics don't change, unless you cut off a head and put a new head on, and then the biometrics will read the head of a dead guy or whatever, So you ready for the dystopian? That's what the word I was thinking of, dystopian, right? And so, we are heading for a dystopian world. And, all you have to do is look at, you want to see a dystopian world, look at Asheville, North Carolina. See what it was in 1991, and see what it is today, right? And that is the benchmark of what we're seeing today. Let's see what our princess is saying here. Oh, you can be read from you. Yep. I mean, but still, I am going to be less present on the, YouTube internet because the kind of interesting conversations I was having on Gmail, I get spam. And whenever you do, if you guys who do get a hold of me, it, all it says is that you sent me a email, and that because of some reason Gmail can't tell me what it says. Right? It's like, okay. And I went and head joke. Boom. Funny. Yes, I understand. Anyway, so I have no need to take anything personal. Whatever anyone says is what they want to say. So anyway, I would suggest that you start to go take my shows and put them on thumb drives and CD-ROMs and save them, because they will be the best antibiotic to what's coming down the road. Right? Because there's shamanic energy in every show I put on. Right? Why do you think I wear these interesting garbs, and tell you these stories? That's what a shaman does. That's what a griot does. Tells you a story so you go, oh, you have an insight, right? And the insight is to enlighten and not inflame, but excite is, but to make yourself become a real, the story of the Buddha, side of the road. He's there in quiet meditation of his, ascending free-willed soul, and a traveler, your bumpkin tourist, bumps into him and looks at him and goes, "Wow, man, what are you? You're all glow. What's up with you, man? Are you God?" And Buddha looks at this guy and goes, "No." "Well, what are you, magician? What are you, a prince? What are you?" And Buddha looks at him and goes, "I am awake." And that, Buddha was awake on every level. I'm awake, but not on every level. I'm still, a putz, I'm still a moron. I'm still susceptible to what my avatar wants, but when I'm awake and conscious and in that state, why do you think there's at least 100 to 200, individual, meditative tours that I've taken you on, right? But I put you guys in the state. If you go back and watch that show and do what I say, and breathe in that 20% and breathe out that 30%, and visualize the prana in your imaginary field, in your morphic field, see, into the mitochondria. You'll never get sick, and just a little, that's all you got to do. Forget anything else. There are a lot of things, supplements, blah, 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 that are good. But those, again, there's a thing called muscle testing, and I was, and that's why I stopped being an active healer. I taught in the most prestigious alternative medical institute called the Swedish Institute in New York on 10th Street. And I was there, they were teaching Swedish massage and other things. I was their, alternative healer professor, and, I had in between 1974 and 1976, I had a practice that was, at the top, or that whole, now that's the whole industry now. I was a numero uno guy. My best friend, or one of my best friends, was the guy who published Whole Life Times, which was the the heralder of this. And another friend, published Mother Earth or the Whole Earth Catalog, and those two things, if we can ever find them, you should go get them. So it's like Dr. Barnard's, Castile soap, his label had all this information. You had in the bathroom. Look at that, he had all these amazing facts on there, and that's kind of what I did, But at a certain point, I was asked, massage. Anybody could be a massage therapist, it was not licensed. And I was asked to be on first New York State and then the national board that they wanted to make of massage therapists, right? To make it so insurance companies would pay for it. And that's when I was on this board. And that's when I realized medicine was changing. It was going to be run by the insurance companies, right? Because, they were talking about these HMOs. Instead of all these private hospitals, they're going to make it corporate, And, so I not went along, but I said, sure, I'll be on your committee. I'll be on, right? And I was there, right? And I was always saying, we shouldn't do this because the minute we do this, every person who's like me is going to disappear. And so on the national, register of massage therapists and healers, there is a little place that I fought for. That's why I stayed in that body, that there's a group where if you are considered a spiritual healer, you don't have to take the test. You don't have to do all this. You can still be registered and licensed without any of that, if you're coming from a spiritual point of view. I don't know if it still exists, but it did up until, 2000 and, last time I looked, 6. But, and, all the different practices, people I worked for said, oh, you're the best, Al, but, if you would, stop healing people and just string them along, we could make a lot more money. And that's what happened when I worked for the Desperate Lawyers. I basically healed those rich people, right? And then when I got really sick, and that was part of it, I was absorbing all of their, by healing them, to get them to agree to these contracts for the Desperate Lawyers, I healed them of their neuroses or psychoses, right? Their toxicity of jealousy and greed. And I was like the exosome, right? I was absorbing this, and then, and that's why I gained 250 pounds. Yes, it was also all of, living in the swimming pool of chocolate mousse for 10 years, which I enjoyed. I cannot say that I did not enjoy, living that high life, right? But it killed me, And yet I was a lucky bastard, which is always, a dual-edged sword, and that I didn't die, that I went out of my body, went home. They're all my spiritual masters, hey, welcome home, good, with balloons and cake and candles. And I was, oh, wow, I'm just going to, yeah, okay. And they said, oh, no, you got to go back. What? Yeah, you got to go back. What? He said, you're not finished. What? So that's why I'm doing this, right? That's why I've done 1,200 frigging shows. Because I'm making sure when I go, I'm the next time, right? It'll be number 8, right? I don't know if I have to go through all 9 lives, but, I serve on the behest of love's co-creation, not my own, right? Because this persona is just an avatar of my soul, and my soul is just a part of love's co-creation. That's what love's co-creation. Love gives me this opportunity to learn and experience. My return is service of love, right? Yeah, not service to my ego, not which would be a service to a belief or a structure or a fear or any of that, No, it's not. Let's see. Now watch out for that Xbox. It's a digital form of heroin, and putting you into a digital morphic state. Sweetest massage. You know that there is nothing called or exists in Sweden? Yeah, I know. I know. I lived in Sweden, and the only thing I liked about it was that I could go to Stockholm and just walk on any airplane, and the government of Sweden would take care of my trip. In the mid 70s, I traveled the world on the Swedish government's nickel, and I went into countries like Iraq, Iran, Syria, Afghanistan on these tours, you know, that the Swedish airline would land in their airport. I would get through. I would have a visa from the Swedish government saying that I was a Swedish, citizen. I had my international driver's license with my picture, which in Sweden at the time was like as good as your passport. So the Swedish document saying that visa and it was okayed by the government that was going into. I go through customs and I see that. I was on this tour with all these, gray Swedes, and even though I was a little colorful, and that's how I went. And I got a hotel, 3 squares, tours, transportation, everything. Didn't matter that I only had like $12 to my name, and I would go into these countries and I would find interesting people and they would be hospitable to me. So I didn't need to pay for that restaurant. I didn't need to pay. And they would take me, on the tour that the tour guide wouldn't take the Swedes on. I mean, when I was, especially when I was in Syria, there were so many spiritual sites in Syria that was pretty amazing. And in Iraq, I was taken to, places that were basically extraterrestrial. There were places that why we had the first Gulf War and why we had Operation Freedom was to go into those ET sites and steal that technology. So that's why the only thing our real army went out in the middle of the desert and took that Stargate and went and ringed the museum and stole all the keys, right? So everything has been done in front of us. It's being done in front of us right now. There's only 4 people watching. 3 thumbs up. I don't know why AI can't give me a thumb up, but anyway, I'm getting hungry for breakfast. It's 43 minutes. I took a fish capsule. I need to eat something because all I'm repeating is fish. But it's good for you. So anyway, again, I'm going to be less on the old internet and more in their shamanic frame. I mean, I'm going to be more in state. So if you want to see me, you're going to have to go back to those videos where I did guided meditations and go into state. That's where I'll be. Like Dragon, he or she went into state one night when I said, I'm getting tired. I'm going to go. Why don't you guys come and visit me in Dreamy Dreamland? And he did. And all he saw was nuclear war and hiding in caves. It's very interesting. When the big asteroid hit and killed the dinosaurs, well, it didn't kill all the reptilians, right? Just killed the big guys who couldn't go and hide. Anything that was small enough to crawl under a rock survived that, right? And the things that could truly crawl under a rock were us, not Homo sapiens, but we are starts with an M. basically lactate. What do you call those guys? Anyway, the characters that were M were basically rodents, right? Mammals. That was the term I was looking for. And you know, so um, those were the the rats and the mice and the voles could crawl under rocks and live in caves, and there's the ones who became us, right? Not so much because we were manufactured, right, by the Anunnaki, right? But they took that reference of the evolving mammal. And, Darwin was right, but he was smart enough to realize there were these big chunks in the evolutionary chain where instead of taking millions of years to go from here to here, it was done in, less than hundreds of years. And he realized that somebody was interceding, and he didn't want to, he wanted to become famous, right? He wanted his 15 minutes of fame, and that's Anthony Fauci, who's constantly touching his face like these are all tells. Whenever he's doing this, he's like you know. And the same thing with the girl with the scarf. Both of those are sleaze bags. Anyone you see on that stage with Carrot Head. Carrot Head's the only one who, because of his nihilism, he is so far gone into it that, and he was hired for that, The powers that shouldn't be realize, okay, he's going to be the last president and we're going to go out with a bang with him, right? And then we're going to have emperors. And that's why Mikey looks so much like Donald Sutherland in The Hunger Games. I mean, all these movies of dystopianness is like straight up of what's going down. It's like spiritually the average because we are all our relations, so we kind of all have to generally agree to let this happen, right? And so the best I can do is come on YouTube and tell you stories, to give you insights, right? That's what a griot does, give you insights, right? And give you examples, give you things that I could do that. All the stories of all the things I've done is like just a template for, yeah, you could do that. Yeah. And they're like survival, guides, right? And what I'm doing now in the deep green, is a good example of, I am the poster boy of social spacing. I got miles between me and the next guy, right? And so, but I am energetically connected to all my relations. I'm out there in the deep woods, and the creatures that I'm connecting with is, the animals, right? The raccoons, and the raccoons and I have gotten to a relative understanding. Now they are being controlled by Mr. Wobbly. So all this, instead of them creating havoc, the stuff they go through and they kick out, on the ground, are like, they threw these books on the floor I didn't even know I had. There was Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. The cover had rotten off, but the book was in great shape. Another one of my ancient books was there and not even touched. I found all my they threw all of my runic books out on the thing, the box of the Course in Miracles. And these are all things that the raccoons have uncovered from my boxes out in the forest and thrown out there, right? So, and got me to go dig other boxes up. So, wow, if they could uncover this, then I need to go back and look. And so that's why I've been here since January, because instead of letting them, run party down in the deep green when I would be away in the winter, now I've been here kind of, putzing around. And the other thing is, I'm got all these little projects, fixing this, making that work, making this better, creating the environment so I can start my own garden back up again. And the garden is, not going to be, the forest already facilitates whatever I need to live on. But the garden is my giving back to the land, and it's giving me, it's that connective circle, right? So I'll get a few nice little vegetables out of that, and that'll be fun. I always love putting that seed in the ground and then watching it grow. I mean, that's what I did in New York and all of the different cultural, social, political, economic structures that I was part of. Is that again? I was this character, the example, um, and I was always a storyteller because you know, I taught a good deal, but I was never comfortable, um, you know, being the teacher that I was hired to be. And that's why I was hired a number of times by, the city of CCNY to teach. And it was supposed to be a specific thing, electrical engineering or this kind of alternative bath or when I taught at the Swedish Institute, ancient mystic healings, I mostly told stories and then would, no tests, no exams, no textbook, that we, had them collect information to write their own textbook. And these went against the grain of those institutions because they make money on selling textbooks. They make money at doing X, Y, and Z. And I didn't do any of that. And so, I would last a year or two. I mean, there were a number of colleges, at Newark College of Engineering, I could have kept doing what I was doing, but I met up with the Ebony Goddess of Newark High School. She was the theater teacher, and I basically brought her into my theater and turned it over to her, And we did such amazing things that we got these awards from the governor, Brendan Burns, for being the best teachers in New Jersey, for racial harmony. We were like ebony and ivory. But I just took it a bit too far. I turned into Huey Newton, and Malcolm X. And in the middle of a white racist engineering school, they don't have, now we have diode street lights, but in the 70s when I was there, they invented what I called the racist light bulb because during the riots of the 60s, the racial riots of the 60s, when Martin Luther King was killed, Detroit, Newark, Philly, DC, LA, the street lights were all mercury vapor lamps, right? And so they were like a big fluorescent tube. So they used, the incandescent light bulb Edison invented. Why that bulb was used. Tesla invented the neon light and the fluorescent tube a number of years before, right? And the neon tube could be, connected to the ground of the earth, and with a high voltage a receiver, could illuminate anywhere. Right, fluorescent tubes. I had a friend of mine who lived out in, in New Jersey, out there where they built the Meadowlands, right? And it's just a swamp, right? And there were these gigantic big power lines, and one of the first, billion-watt radio stations, WOR. And he lived between the high voltage lines and that radio thing, right? And he had all of these antennas everywhere, and he was picking up that energy, and he was, lit his house with fluorescent tubes. He had induction motors, running pumps and refrigeration and heat. And, he wasn't hooked, he didn't have a meter. So the incandescent light bulb, what it did, why it was used for 100 years, even though the neon and fluorescent, much better, devices were made before Edison's light bulb, is that incandescent element burnt the electricity. You know, the Ohm's law, that 100-watt light bulb was equal to the, you know, energy burned in the power plant. And so, you know, Rockefeller and Morgan and Rothschild could make money because they were burning, you know, that material that they were selling, and they were making a profit. You know, when Edison built Wardenclyffe's, you know, Edison, excuse me, that was a terrible line slip. When Tesla built Wardenclyffe's, you know, harnessing zero-point energy and transmitting it wireless to the world, you know, Morgan bankrolled him on purpose because he wanted to own, you know, Nick was like addicted to Morgan's money to do his research. So he went off to Colorado Springs. And when Morgan gave him that check of like $100,000 to go to Colorado Springs, that was like, you know, $100,000 in 1890 was a lot of money. And so, you know, Nick had signed a contract. He didn't really read it. And what it basically said was that, you know, Morgan owned him, right? And so Morgan paid for building Wardenclyffe's in Long Island because it built the technological, it was like a moonshot, built a technological base, right? And that's why Brookhaven's just down the road from where Shoreham, the Shoreham nuclear power plant was built right on the foundation of the Wardenclyffe's facility. So that reactor was more than what was going on there. So, and everything is. And that's why the powers that be fought, you know, so vehemently. I mean, they kind of basically destroyed the Constitution on, you know, that, you know. Anyway. So it's 57 minutes. So at 60:60, I'm going to say goodbye. And I suggest that you guys start down and loading this show, you know, and start, you know, playing those guided meditations. I will try and do one tonight. How's that, right? Because tonight is May 1st, right? The first day of the countdown, right? Right? We are still in the window of opportunity, but it's getting slimmer. You know, the countdown, we're at 210 days, T minus 210 days. May 1st, today is the first day of the countdown to the event, right? Now, we're already in the event. The event started, you know, 6 million years ago when the Anunnaki started playing, you know, creating the different forms of us, right? Oh, let's see. Let's make it easy for everyone. Let's say 6 p.m., right? How's that? Okay, 6 p.m. Between 6 and 7, I will do it, but I will try and be as close to 6, right? Okay. So here it is, 59 and 36, right? So countdown. So be there, Jane. Get more people, you know, call up your friends, you know. Let's see how many people, before I really stop doing this, let's see how many subscribers we can get. Be nice if, you know, before I stop doing this. And I'm not going to stop. I'm going to, you know, just do it less because I'm going to have less access, right? So, because the restaurants are closed, you know, where I could go and you know, my 5 or 6 restaurants, I had a good deal. Yep, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here. We will do a guided meditation, right? And it might be in 2 parts, meaning I'll start at 6, and if nobody shows up, you know, within, you know, 20 minutes, I'll shut down and come back at 8. But the later I do it, the folks in Europe, it gets, you know, tentative. You know, Alan in Dublin, he's pretty good, but you know, if it gets to about midnight here, it's like 5 a.m. he hasn't slept. So anyway, so 6 p.m. and a bunch more than 8 people show up, we'll do a guided meditation within 20 minutes, right? And we'll go then. And we might even do another one later. Okay? So, because, this is my, you may not see me for a while. I'll try, do my best. I know of a few places that have Wi-Fi, but I have to, I can't go in. I have to like sit in their parking lot. Sometimes they get annoyed. So anyway, um, so this is okay. Here we go. We're getting towards 60 seconds. 37, 38. So I love you guys, and you have a good day, and I'll see you at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, okay? 44, 45, 46, 47, 48. Remember to breathe at 20% in, 30% out. 54, 55, 56. Here we go. Do-do-do-do.